Yo, what is up, GBA type people? I am Randy HOD, and welcome to the Week 7 recap of GBA Season 10. So joining me today, we have the OG GBA analyst. We got Zillix. Welcome on in, bro. There were a lot of insane games this week. Week 7, the regular season end is coming up, and the playoff race is really starting to heat up. So if you guys have not subscribed to the GBA channel to catch the analyst videos, make sure you subscribe, join the fan server, and make sure you're keeping up with all the coaches' action, because we only have 3 weeks left to the regular season, and then we got playoffs. As a reminder, the top 6 teams will make the playoffs, the top 2 getting a bye week. This week, we saw the end of 2 win streaks. The Bullet Punch Club have finally dropped their first game to the Chicago Dragapults, and Playmore Esports' 5-game win streak has come to an end, dropping their second game of the season to the Atlanta Victinis, coached by JB. From there, Borussia Donphan picked up a win as well this week. The Calgary Flamethrowers, Copenhagen Sbu got their second win of the season, as well as the San Diego Snugglers picking up the second win of the season. We have 3 teams tied at 4-3, 3 teams at 3-4, 2 teams at 2-5, and 1 team at 1-6. However, with 3 games left to play and the way the point system is this season, there's still hope for a lot of the teams even at the bottom. So as long as they keep playing and maybe hope some of the top teams start to fall apart, then there's still a chance for any coach to make playoffs. I could be wrong, but hey, I'm being optimistic, okay? So yeah, without further ado, if you guys want to stick around, we're going to be covering all of the games very briefly. And yeah, with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. First game, we have the Playmore Esports traveling to Atlanta to play the Victinis. This game featured Ben's MVP candidate, Choice Banded Roaring Moon, going up against the defensive backbone of Skeledirge and Torrentee, which actually are defensive MVP candidates according to the fantasy. And this game featured a lot of early pivoting for both coaches, especially on Ben's side, utilizing the likes of the U-turn Slitherwing and the U-turn Kilowattrel. However, the Sandy Shocks, which proved to be an issue both in prep and during the game, would be able to come in and use its defensive typing to throw up some spikes early on, punishing a lot of Ben's switches, especially with the fact that 5 of his 6 mons were grounded and he had no hazard removal. From there, a lot of his pivoting were to get punished, as he really wanted to try to get that Roaring Moon position to start throwing off attacks, as well as try to get Heatran in to get out some Stealth Rocks. Later on in the game, some of these switches were starting to become telegraphed, and Heatran would eventually get caught with a Hydro Pump from the Trogalgi, but the Heatran would throw up rocks before it went down to start punishing some of Jay's switches, especially on that Torrentee, even though it did have the Regenerator boost. But the game plan for Ben was to try to whittle things down and hope Kilowattrel and or Roaring Moon could clean things up. Later on, Roaring Moon would finally get his chance to come in and Tera and start claiming a KO. However, this let Skeledirge Tera for free and become a fairy type. And with this turn, Jay took advantage and bred the Glimmora coming in, going for the Earth Power, knocking out the Glimmora, and giving Jay a huge momentum swing. Because from there, Ben started to lack options in regards to taking out the Torrentee and just getting through the defensive backbone. Ultimately, Urshifu would clutch up in the end, trailblazing late game and cleaning up the rest of Ben's team, giving Atlanta a very convincing 4-0 W to end the Playmore Esports win streak and bringing Atlanta up to a 5-2 record.
And in our next matchup, we have our home team of the Copenhagen Sawsbucks playing the New York Empoleon on the road. Starting the battle, we see Zoroark's illusion broken early. Following this, rocks are set up on both sides, and the Landers claims the first KO after a Swords Dance. The Sawsbucks continue to keep the pressure up, with Magnezone and Iron Bundle taking out the Zapdos. Copenhagen then attempt to pivot around the Mew, and while most of the predictions are correct, the Mew is able to claim a kill, but not before losing a big chunk of health to a weakness policy Slowbro, securing another kill for the Iron Bundle. This line of plays at first seemed pointless, as the Mew could just sit there and continue attack whatever was in front of it. However, preserving the Landorus and getting Mew in range of the bundle would prove to be exactly what the Sawsbucks needed. New York tries to claw back with the Cerule Edge, and while they do take out Landorus and the Diancie, the Zoroark puts a stop to it, and the bundle finishes the game, giving Copenhagen a win at the home field.
Next game, we have the Calgary Flamethrowers traveling to San Francisco to play the Arcaniners. This week, cbmarcus filled in to coach the Calgary Flamethrowers, and George once again is at the helm for his team, very desperately trying to get a win streak going as his season is starting to slip away from him. And this game, the first couple of turns could not have started any better for the Flamethrowers, or depending on how you're looking at it, it could not have started any worse for George. Turn 1, Hawlucha U-turns on the Colossal, and George brings in his Volcarona, expecting maybe a Stealth Rocks to go up or a Flamethrower and try to get Volcarona in for free relatively safely. Very bold of him, but cbmarcus made a sort of mid-ground play and went for Rock Tomb. However, the Volcarona did live on 1 HP, giving George the 1 point extra point, which was kind of big. It could matter later on. And from there, because the Volcarona was Life Orb, it only was able to get off 1 hit, and cbmarcus actually made a really good play here and went right into the Hisuian Electrode, expecting the Tera Blast, a water type attack, and it was able to sponge somewhat the Life Orb Tera Blast, and Volcarona would go down after only going 1 hit. From there, George, thought his Scarf Hawlucha would be able to outspeed the Electrode, not knowing it was Scarf, of course. And from there, cbmarcus was able to take advantage of that, knocking out the Hawlucha with the Choice Scarf Thunderbolt, and that 2 mons went down really early on for George. Couldn't get any worse from there. George brings in the Amoonguss and tries to go for Spore, and cbmarcus brought in his Choice Bandit Ursaluna, which had Sleep Talk with Guts. Yeah, it claimed the KO. It stayed in Sleep Talks and just easily OHKOs the Amoonguss. It probably knocked out 2 Amoonguss, to be honest. And from there, a 6-3 advantage very early on, and George was just fighting the rest of the game to try to come back. Chi-Yu did get a pretty clutch flinch onto the Colossal to avoid getting the 6-0, and later on, the Gyarados would also flinch to Sylveon to take another KO, bringing the score back to a 2-3 score. So George did make it close, but in the end, Baxcalibur would be able to clean up and give the Calgary Flamethrowers a 3-0 victory, further crushing the hopes of the Arcaniners. But the Flamethrowers are making a nice little run here at the end that could potentially help their playoff chances.
We have the home team of the Chicago Dragapults playing the away team, the Bullet Punch Club. Starting the match, there is a bit of hacks on both sides, as the Hisuian Braviary is frozen by Hippowdon, which gets up Stealth Rocks. Then, when the Braviary thaws, it gets a Confusion from a Hurricane to knock out that Hippowdon, which even things out in the hacks department. The Bullet Punch Club then has a series of turns that go into their favor, preventing the Dragapult from setting up, taking out the Iron Hands, and then an unfortunate full para on the Scizor, preventing the Pults from gaining momentum with a U-turn. But a Hurricane then misses, bringing balance back once more. From here, both teams play a dangerous game, pivoting around each other's late game threats. The Terrifying Dragonite and the Terrifier Iron Moth take turns scaring out Mons and landing massive attacks in return. Chicago has a line of turns where the Scizor U-turns into the Iron Moth, which takes out Uxie. Then they bring the Galarian Zapdos down to recoil damage, putting them in a position to narrowly win the game with a Dragon Dance Dragapult, putting a stop to the Bullet Punch Club's massive win streak.
We have the San Diego Snugglers traveling to play the Wolverhampton Weaviles. This game featured 2 very different teams. We had just Weavile's double specs core of Gengar and Walking Wake, along with a Choice Banded Great Tusk and a Sunny Day Rotom Heat, going with that classic Sun Paradox Mon combination that we've seen all season long, most of the season, going up against D.Rey's ever so frightening duo of the Annihilate and the Palafin. Early on, both coaches would actually lose both of their Rotom forms. Rotom Heat would go down for just Weavile, Rotom Wash would go down for D.Rey, and Palafin would come in after being led. It came in its hero form, able to pivot with the flip turn onto Just Weavile's Great Tusk. From there, Just Weavile was able to get his Galarian Moltres set up with a Double Dance, Nasty Plot, and Agility, and actually flinched the Klefki, which was really big for it to be able to knock it out, as it was the only Mon defensively that was able to check the Galarian Moltres. However, Galarian Moltres did take a pretty big Dazzling Gleam before that, essentially having it very low. But with Klefki down, it opened the door for a potential Iron Leaves late game clutch setup sweep. With that, the Annihilate would come in later on to Tera and KO the Specs Walking Wake, as it was locked into the Choice Specs Draco Meteor, but the Specs Gengar would come in and revenge the Annihilate from there. However, with not a lot of defensive backbone on Just Weavol's team, the Palafin would come in and get a Choice Banded Jet Punch off onto the Gengar, revenging it, but Gengar would not go down without a Curse Body, forcing the Palafin to switch on the next turn as Great Tusk comes in and went for a Choice Banded Headlong Rush. From there though, Just Weavile just started running out of Mons to take the Banded Jet Punches from the Palafin, and Iron Leaves tried to set up later on in the game with the Swords Dance and Tera Psychic, but with the Palafin in the back and Arcanine actually taking the +2 Psychic type attack, the Arcanine and the Palafin were able to prevail, giving D.Rey the 2-0 W.
And for our next matchup, we have the home team of the Borussia Donphan playing off against the Edmonton Coilers. Right away in this battle, we see a physical substitute set from the Volcanion, surprising the Galarian Slowbro with some big damage. However, the Alomomola can sit in front of it and just stall. Lars was prepared for a long battle, however, setting up the spikes early, using Future Sight to his advantage, and Pain Split to try to mitigate the overall bulkiness of the Coilers roster. The Valiant hits the field and immediately reveals the Choice Specs and Terra Fairy. Borussia does a good job pivoting around it at the cost of having rocks set up on their side of the field. The Weavile set proves to be incredibly potent, poisoning the Alomomola with a Fling plus Poison Barb combo, and even though the Weavile is taken down after removing the Donphan, Borussia's Pawmot can revive the Weavile, which would be an important piece in the late game, as Lars is able to use that Weavile and the Iron Treads to knock out the remainder of the Edmonton Coilers roster, giving Borussia the 1-0 victory on the home field.
That is all we have for today, GBA fans. Again, if you guys want to subscribe to the channel, follow all the coaches below. The playoff race is going to heat up. You guys don't want to miss any more of the action. We'll see you guys next week.